right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to the Lubar Center at Marquette University Law School, Eckstein Hall. I'm Mike Goucher, and this is On the Issues. This is our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people we say are doing interesting, important work in this region and beyond. Today we are joined by Fumiaki Kubo. He is the A. Barton Hepburn Professor of Government and History at the University of Tokyo, and he teaches in the graduate schools for law and politics. He is also Senior Fellow at the Tokyo Foundation. Professor Kubo is one of Japan's leading experts on the U.S., and today we will be talking about the relationship between the United States and Japan, a very important relationship. We'll be talking about it from several different perspectives, a little bit about the political dynamic that is at play. We'll also talk about trade and the economy. And we'll spend a lot of time on national security, Japan's national security, and how the U.S. and Japan are approaching issues such as what to do about North Korea. Before we begin, I did just want to take one moment to thank the Consulate General of Japan in Chicago for helping arrange this visit. Professor Kubo will be visiting a number of universities here in the Midwest. We are delighted that Marquette University is one of them, and so thanks to the Consulate for their help in putting this event together. That being said, yeah, that's nice. That being said, please welcome Professor Fumiaki Kubo to Marquette University Law School.
Thank you very much.
Professor, great to have you here, and welcome to Wisconsin. This is your first trip, right?
Yes. Yes. Sorry about that.
And the weather is always like this in the middle of winter. It's just the way it is. But anyhow, thanks for being with us. I want to spend a fair amount of time today on the relationship between our two countries. But I want to begin by talking about the personal relationship between the leaders of our countries, Prime Minister Abe and President Trump. How would you describe their relationship?
That's an interesting question. And I don't know why, but so-called, in English, personal chemistry seems to be very good. I don't know why. But on policy side, on which I will elaborate a bit later, there's used to be a big difference on the relations between these two countries. But so there was a lot of concern when Mr. Trump got elected in November 2016. But right after the election, Prime Minister Abe visited the Trump Tower to see him, even before Mr. Trump got inaugurated. And Prime Minister Abe gave a golfing club to Mr. Trump, which worked pretty well. And,
was that like a gold golf club or something like that?
Oh, yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And in February of 2017, of course, Mr. Trump was president. There was a formal summit meeting in Washington, D.C. and in Florida. But they spent a lot of time for golfing together in Florida. And somehow, golf is an interesting sport. It takes a lot of time. There's plenty of time to talk. In the case of tennis, you don't have a time to chat.
You're breathing hard. You can't. Right.
And my guess is that Prime Minister Abe, first of all, tried to be nice to be respectful of Mr. Trump, but also try to persuade the importance of Japan as an ally. And also he emphasized the seriousness of the threat coming from North Korea. And to some extent, it may have been worked. Also, Mr. Trump's subordinates, like Secretary of Defense Mattis, seem to have persuaded Mr. Trump, that Japan is an important ally. If you like to contain North Korea, you need to work with Japan. So these, personal aspect worked pretty well. So there's a second summit meeting in Japan in November last year. So, but they confirmed the importance of the relations. And I heard that up until now there has been a telephone conversation between two leaders 19 times.
19 telephone
19 times,
conversations?
yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty unusual.
Yeah.
And at one time, which is just before G7 summit meeting, Prime Minister Abe got a call from Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump asked Abe, what's the G7 summit all about? And this is a question, very important question. And also, in the fall of last year, Mr. Trump also asked Mr. Abe, what do you think of Secretary of State Tillerson's remarks about the negotiation with North Korea? And this was not supposed to be a question to be asked of the Prime Minister of other country,
Right.
And Prime Minister Abe was not supposed to criticize Secretary Tillerson, he's not his, subordinate.
Right.
But these are some of the conversations between two leaders. So it seems that somehow Mr. Trump trusts Mr. Abe, in a sense as an unofficial foreign policy advisor. So and that is of course good for Japan, but that doesn't mean that Japan has been successful in getting everything it wants from the United States. But I think it achieved many things.
I want to talk to you about the North Korean situation in a moment, but I did want to ask you one question. We've talked about the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Abe. How do the people of Japan feel about President Trump?
That's a good question. There are polls in Japan like asking, what do you think of Mr. Trump? Do you think he's fit with the job, or do you think he's arrogant or not? And like 70% of the respondents tend to say that President Trump is very arrogant. Or vast majority of the Japanese tend to answer that Mr. Trump may not be fitted with the presidency, his job. But on other aspect, what do you think of the U.S.-Japan relations? Overwhelming majority of the Japanese reply that keep it as they are. So kind of the image of Mr. Trump is not very good in Japan. But as a relation between country to country, we like to keep it. Whoever is the president or whoever is the prime minister.
Sure. And that's a great place to move to the importance of the relationship today. The people see it as important. Clearly, Prime Minister Abe sees it as important. The president has said it's very important. And a large part of that is the situation with North Korea. Based on what you know, Professor, does the United States and does Japan, do they see the threat North Korea poses in the same way, or do they view it differently?
Well, as far as we hear from the campaign, Mr. Trump didn't pay close attention to the situation in Far East in 2016. And his attitude was very much isolationist. And he said that NATO was obsolete, and Japan and Korea should defend themselves. And he even said that Japan can, have even nuclear weapons. And so, this is the starting point of Mr. Trump's national security or foreign policy. So when he got elected, there was a lot of concern within Japan, or within the government of Japan. That was why Mr. Abe, Prime Minister Abe, worked very hard to convince Mr. Trump of the importance of this threat and of the alliance that we have. So I think, Prime Minister Abe has been pretty successful in persuading Mr. Trump on this front. So basically, our view on North Korea or how to deal with North Korea is in line to apply maximum pressure on North Korea so that they could give up developing nuclear weapons and missiles, and that they would ask for a compromise or negotiation, so that they will scrap their nuclear or missile projects. But so this is a basic agreement. But there's small differences between Japan and the United States. Japan has been exposed to that threat from North Korea for many years, simply because it is very close, located close to North Korea. But in the case of the United States, I think many people recently got alarmed by the danger or by the threat from North Korea, because they now have a long-range missile, intercontinental ballistic missile that could reach the island, the mainland of the United States. So some experts in this country, in the U.S., tend to think that if North Korea frees its nuclear weapon project, that would be good enough. But for us, it's not good enough. We need to see a total, scrapping of the nuclear projects, because we are very close to North Korea. So where to kind of negotiate, where to compromise, on that front, there might be small differences.
Do you think do the two countries agree on, for example, direct negotiations with North Korea? Is there a difference between how the Japanese see that and how Americans see that?
There could be a difference, but at this moment, at the summit level, at the Prime Minister, President level, I think it seems to be basic agreement, not to negotiate with North Korea. But there's if we tend to talk about the difference between negotiation and non-negotiation. But actually, in fact, there are a big difference between one type of negotiation and another type of negotiation. In negotiation one, North Korea will be giving up its nuclear missile program. But in negotiation two, United States would plead with North Korea by paying a lot of money and please give up your nuclear project. And in 1990s, I think negotiation two kind of took place and it didn't work. So, we like to see negotiation one. That was our goal. So, we like to apply maximum tough, strong sanctions until North Korea, agree to negotiate on the assumption that they would scrap their nuclear projects.
Help us understand the reaction in your country to the president's tweets about North Korea. And some of those tweets are very strongly worded. He refers to the head of North Korea as Little Rocket Man. How concerned is Japan about the president's comments on social media?
That's concern. There's a lot of inconsistency, in Mr. Trump's tweets, So, and also there's an inconsistency or difference between what he says and what his kind of subordinates or secretaries say. So some people emphasize the need for negotiation, while other people or president just talk about tough sanctions. And we are wondering what is the true intention of this White House. And so in that sense, I think that this White House is more kind of difficult for foreign countries to deal with. We need to detect what the true intention is, or who is really the real kind of mover of the policy.
Secretary Tillerson, for example, does it seem like sometimes the president is talking about a different policy as opposed to what Secretary Tillerson is talking about?
Yeah, so that kind of confusion, is a source of concern for us. And also, Mr. Trump himself is from time to time, very different. Sometimes he's very kind of prone to negotiation, but at other time he's very tough with North Korea or with China. And so, there's no kind of a principle or consistency. So, but for all these reasons, I think the personal relationship or personal chemistry, just top level, might be even important, in this situation.
How worried is Japan about the possibility of a preemptive strike by the United States against North Korea? There is at least some school of thought out there that might have to happen in order to resolve this situation. With Japan being so close to North Korea, what would the implications of that be for Japan if the U.S., for example, were to strike North Korea?
I think as far as the general public of Japan is concerned, I think most of them are deeply concerned about that prospect. As far as when it comes to the government, if they kind of notified, well in advance what will happen. So, well, there might be a room for the government of Japan to support that option, but still, that's basically a pretty dangerous option because North Korea has thousands of rockets on the border of South Korea, and they could hit Seoul or even part of Japan, anytime. As a retaliation, and so as a result, I think the basic thinking for us is that probably that option won't be adopted.
How back in September, I think it was, in one of their tests, North Korea sent a rocket, a ballistic missile, I should say, ballistic missile across. It went right over the nation of Japan. What was the reaction in Japan to that?
Well, that happened actually for the first time in late 1990s.
So it's not the first time. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we are accustomed to that. We like that. But
it would be hard to get accustomed to that, wouldn't it? Yes.
But especially in 1990s, that was pretty shocking to Japan. That was kind of a wake-up call for Japan. So that was a starting point for Japan to have anti-missile, facilities. So we are probably more prepared for that, and we could know, which direction that rocket or missile would go. So I think, the people in military, in Japanese, the self-defense forces knew that it won't, hit main part of Japan, just it will go over Japan, and it will not be it will not bring any serious casualty, But, that every time there's a missile test by North Korea, we have a kind of a nationwide alert system. So there's a kind of a public announcement all over, the region, not all over Japan, but the region that the missile is going, and the missile is coming. Be prepared. So that affects the everyday life of Japanese, in a way.
But it's not a panic.
No.
People are sadly used to that.
In a sense. But sometimes, the prediction is widely off the mark. So,
I want to ask you about the president's reaction when he saw that North Korea had sent a missile that had flown over Japan. He wondered, why isn't Japan responding more aggressively to this? What is the answer to that? Because Japan is changing in terms of its buildup of the military. Things are changing. Help us understand Japan's military capabilities and how it views its role in this new world.
I think, Japanese self-defense forces didn't hit the missile because they are well aware that it is not coming to Japan. And In 2015, Prime Minister Abe's cabinet and the parliament and the governing party passed a very important legislation on the right to collective self-defense, in which we did kind of a constitutional reinterpretation. And Article 9 is pretty famous. It's a pretty pacifist, strictly pacifist clause of our Constitution. And the government interpretation had been until 2015 was that we could not exercise the right to collective self-defense. And the collective self-defense is a little bit difficult legal term. But like in 1940, when UK was being defeated kind of by Nazi Germany, United States, Franklin Roosevelt thought that it was necessary for the United States to fight for the UK, to defend the UK, because UK was a very important country for the national security and defense of the United States. So for Japan, United States is a very important ally. So if the United States is being attacked, we like to help. But until 2015, the government legal constitutional interpretation said that we couldn't do that. But in 2015, due to the change of the interpretation and the legislation, we are now able to do that in a limited way. So when there is a contingency on the Korean Peninsula and the United States is like military is being attacked, we are now able to help the United States, and we can fight with the United States. I think this is a big change. And our spending for defense has been below 1% of our GDP, which is pretty small. Even New Zealand spends 1.2%, and we are, facing serious threats from North Korea, from China. Probably New Zealand is not facing any serious threat, but even the New Zealand spends 1.2%, and Germany like 1.2%. Now it's close to 2%. So, but Prime Minister Abe is trying to boost the defense spending, and it's still below 1% of the GDP, but probably in a few years it will pass 1%. So we are doing our part to, first of all, defend ourselves, but to be a better partner, in containing the danger and the threat of North Korea.
We talk a lot about North Korea, but I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on another area where there is a fair amount of tension, and that's in the South China Sea and the East China Sea, where there are territorial disputes. China's been much more aggressive in building in that area on certain islands, and the U.S. has a presence, and Japan has a presence. How dangerous a situation is that in today's world?
I think, first on the East China Sea, the situation in like 2012, 13, 14 was more serious because I thought that China was serious in their intention to take the islands that Japan has ruled. Now it's more or less normal, but I think there is a constant infringement of the territorial waters of Japan by Chinese government vessels. So, but now that's a kind of a normal to be regretted. And when there was a campaign, presidential campaign here in 2016, Mr. Trump was asked about what would you do when you become the president on this situation. And he replied that I don't like to answer that. He just was silent on that. That was a pretty scary thing for the government of Japan. So that was a major concern about Mr. Trump's foreign policy with the government of Japan. And so that was why Prime Minister Abe rushed to Trump Tower to see him. But on the first summit meeting in February 2017, Mr. Trump changed his attitude totally to say that his government will defend the disputed islands called Senkaku Islands or Diaoyu Islands in Chinese, and as he praised the defense of that island as a treaty obligation of the United States. So that was a great relief, for Japan. And in South China Sea, the situation is slightly different, but there was a doubt that Mr. Trump will not be interested in the situation there. But from May of 2017, Trump administration started the so-called operation of the freedom of navigation, in which U.S. government will send military vessels in the territorial waters claimed by China in order to disregard the Chinese claims that these are their waters. And that claims is based on like a fake islands, Sure. Yeah. So, and I think, and now I think, the Trump administration has done this operation at least 5 times, which is good. From the perspective of Asia, or even from the perspective of the world, United States is the only country that can do that. If Japan does that, there will be huge anti-Japanese riots in China. If the Philippines does that, there will be ban on the bananas, and the Philippines will be hard to press. And Vietnam wouldn't do that. So still, United States is playing a crucial role in the stability of the world, especially in the part of Asia. And in China didn't like this operation, but they protest in the strongest words. But there's nothing they could do. Mm-hmm. So we are still kind of, dependent on the United States' willingness to engage in the world. And the concern that we had when we saw Mr. Trump getting elected was that the United States foreign policy might be going through a radical change from the engagement to isolationism. And we are pretty glad that Mr. Trump reversed his original position.
I want to spend a little time talking about the economy and specifically trade between our two countries, because the president, I'm wondering from Japan's perspective, do they understand what the United States wants in a trade relationship under the Trump administration? Is that clear to Japan?
Well, I think it's pretty clear, but I think the government officials tend to believe that Mr. Trump's insistence is off the mark or basis, because he tends to say that it's unfair that Japan doesn't import many cars from the U.S.
He's been very critical. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's our kind of intention, he says, that not to buy American cars, but the German cars are sold pretty well. So, sometimes his obsession with trade imbalance is the kind of the indication of the past thinking of 1980s and 90s. And this is the area Prime Minister Abe has not been successful. He wanted Mr. Trump to be in the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, but Mr. Trump withdrew from TPP very soon after he became the president. So, in spite of the many successes that the Prime Minister Abe achieved, there's a few things that he couldn't achieve.
It seems like the president every now and then, even when he has visited Japan, he will. It seems like he's hinting that there could be, tariffs, whatever, that there are things that could be done to even things out between our two countries. Does Japan think that's a real possibility?
Well, he's basically pretty unpredictable. So, we are ready to have any kind of criticism. But as a kind of counter proposal, Japan is now ready to buy many weapons from
Military,
the United States.
absolutely.
So that might be a good news for some industries in the United States. So.
Give me a sense. We've talked a little bit about China in regarding the South China Sea, and I want to get your sense of how America is viewed in the world today, especially in your part of the world, as opposed to how China is viewed. There is at least an emerging school of thought that China is playing a larger role in the world now, that America is retreating from some of what it's done historically. How is it viewed in Japan and in Asia?
Yeah, you are right in saying that there are people in Japan who tend to see that China is rising and the United States is on the decline. But I tend to think that that is a wrong assessment of the future. And also, I want the United States to be kind of an internationalist and engaged in the world. Yeah, to be honest, there's some concern in Japan about the future of U.S. Politics or foreign policy after we look at Mr. Trump, elected. And I think he is the first isolationist candidate in the Republican Party since 1945. And he is the first protectionist nominee of the Republican Party since 1945. And so we are kind of concerned that the Republican Party might be changing rather fundamentally. It used to be a party of internationalism, Reagan's strong foreign policy, and open free trade. And the Democrats already chose and nominated a candidate, George McGovern, who is from this area, South Dakota. And his slogan was America Come Home, which implies a strong isolationist thinking. And the Democrats have been more protectionist than the Republicans these days. So our worst kind of a case scenario might be that both Republicans and the Democrats are less internationalist, even isolationist, and protectionist. And I think I'm afraid of this situation because then China is there in the world, and no one can stop the Chinese influence, which is growing in economic terms, but also in military terms. So after Mr. Trump became the president, he changed his position, at least on national security front, from the isolationist position to peace through strength, Reagan-like position. And I like that aspect. And we felt a little bit, when there's Mr. Obama in the White House, we felt that his policy toward China was a little bit too soft, too cooperative, So that is our perception.
But the protectionist part of it, that would bother you if that's where America began to move in a really big way.
Of course. But that's a little bit understandable, because Japan also has a kind of a problem with international kind of open trade. And do you know the famous elephant curve, where, since 1988 to 2008, for 20 years, many people in the third world countries became richer. But as far as the advanced countries are concerned, only the top people, the wealthy people became richer, but the ordinary working people suffered a lot. And this is pretty universal phenomena, not just in the United States, but also in Japan or many European countries. So the ability to persuade the people of the political leaders are now even more crucially important.
I've been asking how Japan views this country. how does Japan think America views it? I mean, what do they think Americans think of Japan right now? Or I'd be very curious to know. Yeah.
Oh, that's a difficult question. Well, as far as
speaking for all Japanese citizens, yes.
Yeah,
right.
to be safe, there's a poll with Americans. And what do you think of Japan? I think Japan is doing pretty well. Like 70% of the Americans tend to say that Japan is a country that you can trust as an ally. But there's another question: which country is more important in the world? China tend to be at the top, sometimes. But the recent tendency is that China as a rating is going down. But first of all, I want you to understand Japan as a reliable ally, and we share the same basic values like individual liberty or democracy, and we like to maintain the current international order in many parts of the world, where you are not supposed to change the status quo unilaterally by force. And so, on these things we can work together. But also, Japan might be an interesting place because I have interesting baseball players, and Yu Darvish is coming to this area.
Down in Chicago. Yeah. We wish you were coming to Milwaukee, but
sorry about that.
Going to be in Chicago. Yeah, exactly.
And as a tourist attraction, I think we have hot springs and many things, that should be interesting to you.
Here we were laughing. I hope I won't embarrass you by this, but we were talking in the office a little bit. But Americans also probably see what they want to see in Japan. We were saying that some point to Japanese gun laws and say we should be more like Japan. Others point to immigration in Japan and say we should be more like Japan. So depending on your politics, you might see what you want to see.
And also, on different perspective, some Americans, especially people at the New York Times, tend to criticize Japan for being too nationalistic. As I mentioned, we changed the constitutional interpretation about Article 9, but that doesn't mean, in my view, that Japan is becoming a dangerous militaristic country of the 1930s. But some people tend to take that interpretation alongside with some Chinese scholars or Korean officials. So there are different views in the United States, and we are pretty aware of the differences.
Final question, and this deals with demographics. The United States, compared to a number of European countries and some parts of the world, is still a fairly young country. Japan has a challenge with that. How will that play out in the years ahead for Japan?
Well, our kind of the tendency, declining tendency of kind of a population is hard to reverse in the coming 30, 40, or even 50 years. So we are now trying to utilize more kind of workers from like the aged people or female people, or even including the foreign workers. I think there are more than 1 million foreign workers already in Japan, but they are not given a name immigrants. And immigration, the word immigration is still taboo in the governing party's coalition. But in fact, there are substantial number of kind of virtual immigrants working in Japan. And my sense is that this is inevitable, and we have more kind of diverse and more kind of foreign people, in Japan in the future.
Okay. Let's take some questions from the audience. We'll open it up here. If you are in the seating bowl, please press down on that black button. There's something that will actually say push on it, I believe. Push down on that. Keep your finger on it. We'll be able to hear your question. If you're in the back, Ryan, the gentleman with the microphone, will walk over to you and hold it in front of you. No speeches, please, and we'll get to as many questions as possible. I'm going to start and work my way up. I'll get up to you, Michael, in a second, but we'll start over here. Yeah.
Can you comment?
Keep your finger down on it. Just keep pressing on it.
Can you comment on the Japanese-Russian-U.S. interrelationship?
Oh, interesting. Sure. We have a negative view of what Russia did to Crimea and in East Ukraine, and what they did was the same with what China is doing in South China Sea to change the status quo unilaterally by force. So Japan is applying actually a sanction on Russia too. But at the same time, we have a hidden or unhidden aspiration to take back the so-called northern territories. So Prime Minister Abe has an interesting personal ability to get along with, not just with Trump, but with Putin too. And their relations are pretty good. But we are not so naive to believe that we can take back the Northern Territory very soon. But that is a very important agenda for the Japanese people, to take back the Northern Territory. So, that is always one important aspect in thinking about our Russian policy.
Okay. Professor Waxman. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Kubo-sensei, do you think that Foreign Minister Kono, who may challenge Prime Minister Abe in many ways, if he were to take a significant role in the LDP, that he would become more amenable to the United States or more distant in both its military but also its trade relationships, and especially in relation to immigration into Japan? Thank you.
I haven't thought about his idea about immigration, but his original stance was he was originally against, before becoming the foreign minister, he was against the nuclear power generation, and he was tough with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in wasteful spending. But he showed that he has a good amount of learning ability, which means he changed a lot. So given his ability to change, he may have a future. But he's pretty young, and we have to wait for many years for his turn to come. I think it would take years for him to challenge Abe.
I was just to follow up on that. Does Japan have any reaction to what's happening in China, where they're now talking about essentially President Xi could be there for as long as he wants?
Well, I think it's a bad news for Chinese people. I'm sorry for them, first of all. But it is a little bit controversial. Which China is better for Japan? China under one centralized leadership, or China under divided, competing leadership. In the latter case, their Japan policy tend to get even rougher, even tougher. So in that sense, and right now, our relation with China is slightly getting better. Probably because Xi Jinping held his power, more firmly. So, for the short-term perspective, I don't know, and this might be slightly even good news for Japan. But overall, this is a very dangerous choice for Chinese politics and Chinese people. So.
Okay. Other questions? Did I see somebody over here? A question? Oh, yeah, sure. Hang on one second. We'll bring a microphone over to you so we can all hear your question.
I have two questions. One, do the Americans store nuclear weapons in the territory of Japan, including Okinawa? And my second question is, do you think the North Koreans really feel threatened by Japan?
The first question...
Are nuclear weapons being stored
right now
on Japanese soil?
I don't think so. And the second question was the North Korea is feel threatened by Japan. Was that your question?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Japan doesn't have kind of a strong striking capabilities yet. We are now talking about having a counter-strike capability, but we are in the stage of just talking about that. So I don't think North Korea should be threatened by Japan. They should be threatened by the United States. Or South Korean military has a fairly strong capability to attack North Korea. So I think these should be their major concern.
Okay, other questions? Yes, sir? Just keep pushing down on it. There you go. Just push.
You can just shout.
Please, green light.
Thank you. What do you think the United States, Japan, and South Korea can do to pressure China more, to pressure North Korea to become involved in reasonable negotiations?
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think, the South Korea will not challenge China. They are, for example, quiet on the Chinese activities in the South China Sea. They don't like to confront China, So, that's our concern, and I think that is also a concern of the United States government. United front among these three countries are always difficult. Of course, the South Korean government will ask China to cooperate more on North Korea, but I don't think they could resort to a strong kind of measure to persuade China.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes, hang on 1 second. Bring you a microphone.
Oh, I'm getting so many questions.
I'm just curious whether you have any thoughts about the Olympics and the North Korean and South Korean kind of rapprochement at the Olympics, and if that has any significant long-term effects or anything.
Yeah, that's an important question, in fact. My sense is that South Korea was under some illusion about the measures taken by North Korea. North Korea's smile diplomacy is probably just for short term, temporal, and there'll be the original North Korea, again in April, and there might be a summit meeting between the leaders of South and North Koreas, but the result, there has been 2 summit meetings in the past, but the result has been failure, and so we should not be optimistic about the temporal, short-term rapprochement between the 2 Koreas.
North Korea taking advantage of the moment.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. Yes. So when that little green thing comes on, just stay right there.
Considering that Japan is unique in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, is there a chance in the future, do you see a chance for Japan to wish for the development of nuclear weapons of its own?
I couldn't hear the question, the first part.
Given the history of Japan's experience with nuclear weapons, do you see a point in time where Japan might want to develop nuclear weapons of its own? Is that correct?
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My instant reaction is no. The public opinion is overwhelmingly against developing nuclear weapons. Although we have nuclear power plants, but and even for the nuclear power generation, the majority of the opinion is now against that. And so sometimes this is called nuclear allergy or Japanese nuclear allergy symptom. But this kind of a hatred of the nuclear weapons is very strong among the Japanese people. So sometimes the international relations theorists say that if the the neighboring countries, all these neighboring countries have a nuclear weapon. Japan must go nuclear, but I think that's a very erroneous assumption.
You can build up your military, but in different ways, rather than using
Exactly,
nuclear
yes.
weapons. Maybe a final question or two? Anybody? Yes, Carl? Press down, please.
There. As I understand it, in Japan, the immigrant workers are legal. And the second President Bush here proposed at one point that we do that sort of thing. And that it didn't pass in the Congress, I guess. Am I correct in thinking that the workers that are immigrants are legal in Japan, and how is that working out well?
That's a difficult question to answer. My sense is that many of the foreign workers are legal, though there are a lot of probably illegal workers, like overstaying in Japan after your visa expires. So including these overstay people, I think there are also, in a narrow sense of the word, illegal immigrants, the foreign workers too.
Anybody with a final question? Yes.
In light of the kind of divided response that Mr. Trump has in the United States, what kind of support does your Prime Minister have from the people of Japan?
For the divided?
We have a very divided country, in this, but what kind of support does Prime Minister Abe have from the people of Japan?
Oh, that's a very difficult request. Well, Japan is divided too, and I don't think any foreign country can help us, heal our division. But I think the way you are divided, most visibly between liberal and conservative, or Democrats and Republicans, are also slightly changing these days. And the new division might be internationalist, globalist elite, and non-elite people. And so I think this new division might be cross-cutting the older division. So this is my analysis. I can analyze, but I cannot offer a concrete way to, heal this division in your country. Sorry about that.
But in many countries, you actually have sort of that
Yes,
battle. And
yes.
You see a little bit of that in Japan?
I think so, yes, yeah.
All right. Anybody else with a question? Or else I'll wrap things. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I missed you up there. Hang on 1 second. Wait, please. It's only about a half hour before Ryan gets to you. But we still have a couple minutes, so hang in there.
So outsourcing businesses, American businesses, or some of them are outsourcing to Japan to decrease labor costs. What is your intake on that? Can you comment?
Outsourcing.
First of all, let's, I guess, talk on the record. Based on your experience, how much are American companies, I guess, outsourcing to Japan is the question. Is that happening?
That doesn't happen, in our relations.
Not to Japan.
Because, the labor cost in Japan is pretty expensive. So Japanese companies are outsourcing a lot, to...
Like car plants in this country.
Yeah.
Auto plants.
And of course, we are Japanese, many of the Japanese companies are manufacturing cars here,
All right, we're going to wrap things up there. Before we go, just a couple of things. For the people who weren't in the room, you can turn on your television set at 7 o'clock on Friday night. You'll see the first televised debate between the state Supreme Court candidates. That's on WISN 12. You can also watch it online at WISN.com. It will be live streamed. And then Charles Franklin and the Marquette Law School poll. We'll be talking about that on Monday. Charles will be here to give us the results of the newest law school poll. So we hope you'll join us either in person or join us again by watching our live stream. Once again, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody who turned out today for their interest and their attention. I want to thank the consulate in Chicago for thinking of us. We are delighted that you could be with us today. And most of all, I just want to thank Professor Kubo for his insights and his thoughtful discussion of some of the challenges facing our big world today. Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.